Hi everyone, welcome to this month's IIEA webinar. This is our 8th panel session on challenges and joys of teaching economics in Iran. Really happy to have you. Do join us also for next month's webinar. We will announce the topic and the panelists very soon. But today I'm super excited to have 4 really great speakers. And I will let the panel chair Ramin introduce the concept and the speakers. Just as a housekeeping, please put your questions in the Q&A box. If you want to share something with the other people on the call, you can obviously make use of the chat. And more details about our webinar series is on our website. So I'll stop talking and hand over the microphone to Ramin.
Hi. Kamyar, could you stop sharing the screen, please? Thank you. Hi, everyone. Welcome. I am Ramin, a lecturer at the Department of Economics at University College London, and also a member of CTaLE, Center for Teaching and Learning Economics. And today I have the pleasure of holding the very first IIEA session on economics pedagogy. But let me briefly explain, what is economics pedagogy? It's quite a mouthful, right? And essentially it's about 3 things, what, how, and why. What we teach to our students, how we teach those stuff to our students, and why we teach the student. What's the purpose? What's the goal of our teaching? Do we want to prepare people for a private sector? Do we want to prepare people for the public policy making? Do we want to educate the public? So economics pedagogy is about these 3 things. Now, why is it important? Why am I asking you, the audience, to spend the next 90 minutes of your time listening to us? In the past decade, teaching of economics has become a very hot topic. And this is because of 3 fundamental changes. The first change has been the credibility revolution. The advent of big data has completely transformed economics into a dominantly empirical field. And because of that, there has been a lot of stress on data training and data skills in teaching of economics. Economics has become more problem-driven, more data-driven. So that was the first factor. The second factor was a 2008 financial crisis. This has forced the profession to become more critical of itself and therefore do a little bit of soul searching. So since 2008 financial crisis, there has been a lot of discussion about, maybe we should change or rethink the way we teach economics. So that was the second factor. And the final one, I think, is the most important factor, is that in the past 10 decades, I believe our profession has been suffering the trust problem. According to Duflo, actually, the public trusts the weather forecasters more than economists. And I think we're partly to blame. We struggle to communicate economic ideas to non-economists. This could be a co-worker or this could be a general public. And because of that, there has been a lot of emphasis in our teaching in communication and interpersonal skills. So because of these 3 factors, the teaching of economics has become a very hot topic. And I thought that, it's time that we start discussing these things in IIEA panel. And that's why I put together a wonderful group of people, star teachers, to discuss this issue. Now, before I introduce my panelists, let me talk about the structure of our talk today. Let me just copy paste what I'm going to do here. Yeah. So this is basically the structure of our talk today. 45 minutes each of our speakers will talk for 15 minutes. Then we'll have a roundtable discussion for 20 minutes. And then the Q&A for the remaining part. Okay, all good. Now, let me turn to our first speaker, Dr. Mohammad Vesal. He's an assistant professor of economics at Graduate School of Management and economics at Sharif University of Technology. He has got his PhD from London School of Economics. His research interests are environmental and resource economics, education, and taxation. Now, Mohammed is very passionate about communicating economics to people, to the general audience. He has frequently, appeared in popular podcasts like CTaLE, Forecast. He regularly writes column in newspapers. So he's really passionate about communicating economic ideas to non-experts. But, we all heard that Mohammed is a star teacher, right? And let me tell you a personal anecdote that testifies the quality of his teaching. So I got a friend here, Ali, who's doing his PhD in economics at LSE, and he's a former student of Vesal. So I was talking to Ali the other day and say, how are things going at LSE? What are the courses you're doing? He says, I'm doing micro with, Professor X, micro with Professor Y. And I asked them, how's the quality of teaching? They said, fine, but they're not good as Dr. Vesal. So with that anecdote, I hand over to Mohammed.
Thanks for the nice introduction. I don't think I deserve that introduction, but nevertheless, I'm honored to be on this panel, and I will offer my thoughts on teaching economics in Iran. And I will reflect on my experiences in teaching both at the LSE as a teaching assistant mostly, and in Iran as a lecturer. So if I may share my slides with you. So I hope you can see my slides right now.
Yep.
I'm going to talk about challenges and joys of teaching economics in Iran from my own perspective. So first, I will give you a brief introduction about Sharif and then our department at Sharif. I will briefly elaborate on our program, how it's structured, because it's slightly different than the main MSCs in the field. And then I will go into the courses that I teach in this program. And I teach quite a diverse set of courses in our program, which is positive and negative as well. So Sharif is a pretty young, I would say, university. It has established 57 years ago. It has 14 departments, mostly engineering departments. There is only our department in social sciences, another in philosophy. It has around 470 academic staff, and the stock of students is about 10K. And the distribution is, there are mostly bachelor students, quite a bit are MSc, and a few are PhD students. Our department has established 20 years ago, almost 20 years ago, and it is only a graduate department. It's a graduate school. It's not involved in bachelor education. So we have an annual intake of about 80 MBA students, 40 MSc Econ students, and about 5 PhD students in management and economics each. We also hold a minor in economics. It's like a side track for students who are in the bachelor studies of engineering or math or whatever science. For them, we offer like a series of courses that they can take and receive a minor degree in economics. It was a bit more popular before, but recently popularity has decreased because of regulation at the university and the ministry level. This chart shows just a brief overview of our intake over the courses of the years that we had students in the economics. So the MSc program just started off in 2002, and then we gradually reached a level of like 40 students each year. There is some fluctuation in the intake, and from 2016, we started let's say a major in economics, in energy economics, which is a specialty needed in Iran because of rich resources, rich energy resources in Iran. And we take probably about a third of our students from this field. The quality and the background of our students are really a joy here. So our intake comes from top ranks in the entrance exam. In Iran, we have a nationwide entrance exam for MSc, which is a bit odd, but nevertheless, it happens each year. And the top ranks often come to our school, which is an honor and a joy for us as teachers. We have a very, let's say, a strong desire from non-economics students to come and study economics at the graduate level. And the rules allow them to do this. So our intake recently has been 70% non-economists entering our MSc program. These students should sit through the MSc entrance exam for the economics, but it is a very simple exam, I would say. And they can just quickly prepare for it like over the course of a few months. So it's no big deal. And they often get good ranks in the exam, and they can easily enter whatever program they prefer. But having students from two backgrounds, a few from economics and a few from non-economics backgrounds, means that we have a bimodal distribution of math quantitative background. Often economics students, good students with economic background, they don't have strong quantitative backgrounds. For example, they may not be familiar with differential equations, they may not be familiar with constraint optimization and things like that. On the other side, engineering students are very strong, and they also possess programming skills along with math skills. Nevertheless, both categories are very motivated, and they are often very dedicated as well. At least at the beginning of the program, they're very dedicated. As we move on, dedication starts to fall. And some of them divert to part-time jobs in order to acquire experience and also prepare for their later placements. In terms of placement, I would say each year, half of our students apply for PhD to foreign universities. We have a very strong track record of admissions at top schools. I myself was a student back in 2008, and I got admission from a few schools like LSE, and this pattern happens every year. A few of them continue PhD in Iran, in Sharif or Tehran or elsewhere, and some of them not very, it's not like one or two, it's a group actually, end up in private and public organizations. I'm giving a few examples here. Like in the Parliamentary Research Center, there are many students. I would count probably 5 or 6 of them in this research center. And this center is responsible for advising the parliament on the various laws and bylaws that comes to the parliament for decision. There are a few, probably 4 or 5 students in the management and planning organizations, graduates or students. And also in the private sector, the recent startups like the online taxis or the online stores like CTaLE or Divar are recruiters of our graduates. The financial institutions like banks and the corporate sector are also active recruiters of our students. If I want to say something about employability, I would say that the unemployment rate for our graduates is close to 0. There is no one who is willing to accept a job who is left unemployed. Actually, we have problems recruiting people. Like we often advertise jobs and we don't find people for their positions, for those positions. So let's get to the faculty side. We are 10 faculty members in economics, and we have an active engagement with the private and public organizations. That doesn't mean that every one of us is engaged at one moment in time with these organizations, but we have a strong track record of projects, grants, and also partnerships with organizations in doing research and applied research. And it is actually a virtue that we cover quite a diverse set of fields. We have experts in market design, Dr. Fatemi, my colleague, and experts in macroeconomics, international trade, even political economics. actually there are one person, for example, in each of these fields. And I myself cover development and public economics here. So it is quite odd for such a small department to cover so many fields in economics, but we do that. And we offer courses in each of these fields that I've shown you. The program structure here is it's quite long compared to other MSc. It's 2.5 years, almost 3 years for some students. We offer 7 core courses. It's the usual sequence of micro, macro, and econometrics. We have 3 option courses from the diversity that I explained, and also an MSc thesis, which is a very substantive piece of research. So it's in par with, I would say, a PhD research. It's not like an MSc thesis that we often see at the MSc elsewhere. Briefly about my own background, I've taught principles of economics, development, and public as a teaching assistant at the LSE. I've also worked on a project guide for the international program of the University of London for development, which was in 2014 or 13 maybe. At CTaLE, I've taught several courses listed on the right panel here, and the intake is different. So for the core courses, I've worked in econometrics, the first course in econometrics, and micro 1 and 2, this first and second MSc level micro courses. The intake here is 20 to 40 students. So in some years, I've taught the whole cohort, and in some other years, I've taught the cohort in parallel with one of my colleagues. I've been involved in 4 option courses. 3 of them are my fields: development, public, and environmental economics. And I've been teaching research method at some point in my career. I've also been involved with the PhD courses, micro and public economics. I will focus as I move on to on the MSc courses that I've taught. So let's look at the micro experience here. For micro, we are very theory-centric. So we start off with preferences and go through the chapters of Maskell, Winston Green book, which is very hardcore, I would say, for the students who don't have enough math background, but nevertheless, we do that. We focus on what modeling means and how theorists should see the world. So we talk about abstraction, how we justify assumption, and how we should think about relaxing them in terms of intuition and in terms of like moving beyond the model that we have at hand. I will try to give myriads of examples that arise daily in Iran, basically, because of trial and error policymaking. It's a bad thing for the general population, but for economists, there are like myriads of examples to work on. You're going to work in the morning and you hear a piece of news that's just ridiculous, and it's a topic for discussion in the class. So I try to just improvise and work on whatever recent topic is in the debates. This course is a bit hard to keep students engaged because it's a theory course, and I don't want to dilute the theory. I want them to see propositions, proofs, and etc., and gain some intuition from the proofs that we cover. The math is tough for non-econ students, for econ background students, sorry. But for non-econ ones, it's sometimes trivial. On the other hand, the intuition is hard to grasp for non-econ background students, but it's very trivial and obvious sometimes for the econ background students. So we have to strike a balance and basically serve the interests of these two groups, which is a hard thing.
5 minutes.
Thank you. So the techniques that I use, the methods that I've used in my class is pairwise discussion. So I make sure in the pairwise discussions that the key concepts are delivered and people show their understanding in their discussions while I'm going on and looking at the groups. I try to take a different approach to my colleagues probably in Iran, and according to my past experience as a student in Iran, often we faced surprise exams and quizzes, like a question came up that we never saw before. I never do that. My questions are always predictable in terms of content, in terms of like structure. My exams are always structured the same in over the years, but the questions are new. Some new aspects are brought up to the exam, so I can basically assess various levels of understanding. Whether people have understood the concept, can reiterate whatever has been said in the class, and also whether they can apply the concept to real life examples, whether they can prove propositions and things like that. So I use also a very heavy hand approach, which is opposite to the UK style of teaching. In the UK, students are just left to their own, so they have to self-study and are given a myriad of references they have to go through. Whereas in the US system, we have a lot of lecturing, a lot of quizzes, midterms, etc. We are closer to the US system here. So we have like 4 or 5 quizzes, weekly assignments, and we basically torture the students to go through all the details that we want them to go. I also do some unconventional compared to what my colleagues do in Iran. I have an essay in micro, so I give a topic and I want students to discuss the topic in the essay in 500 or 1,000 words. Actually, I have to explain what that essay means to our students. I often allocate like 30 minutes in one class, which is not sufficient, but I cannot do more given the time constraint. I try to be receptive of student feedback in all my classes, which is, again, a rare thing in Iran. I've learned this the hard way, actually. And the LSE was a very good place in terms of also the supporting training for teaching assistants. I've gone through the postgraduate certificate for higher education, which gives training to teachers. And I've faced basically the issues, the theoretical and practical issues in teaching, which was a great resource for me once I become a teacher. So I really appreciate student feedback, not just eye contact and like the physical mode of students, but also formal minute papers in the class, and also informal anonymous forms that students can write down whatever they wish to for my classes. Let me move on to metrics, which is probably more interesting for Ramin. In metrics, I focus on intuition at the beginning and then move on to theory. So I don't leave this theory aside. I always give the proofs of matrices on biasness, consistency, etc. But I will prioritize intuition. What do I mean by intuition? The basic thing that correlation is not causation. If the students go out of this class and understand that correlation is not causation, that's a good sign for me. And I think many students do that, because I start this discussion from the first class and I continue till the final exam. So it's a continuous push that what this means and what statistical methods can achieve. So the gist of a statistical method is just rely on correlations and give some estimations of the parameters. So I abstract in my teaching from the complexities of all methods that we have in econometrics and focus on multiple regression for basically 60% or 70% of the course to basically give this view that correlation is not causation, and what the statistical apparatus does for us. Then I move on to 2 techniques, differential and instrumental variables, and discuss the intuition and also the theory behind these. The difficulty, the red lines are basically challenges, the green lines are joys. Students have almost no knowledge of statistics, so I start with the statistics in this course. In the Iranian community, people often focus on techniques. So what are the tests for heteroscedasticity? I hate that approach because it bogs you down with a variety of techniques that you don't understand actually.
1 minute, Mark.
1 minute.
Yeah.
No appreciation of data. So you see many Farsi papers that don't describe their data. What is your data? They go straightly to the results. So I often provide students with a lot of explanation of what we mean by data and how we should handle data. And obviously no understanding of statistical methods. The joy is that everyone is very engaged in this class. And I see a lot of discussion in the class, which is very interesting. So I use real life examples. These are excerpts from newspapers that I just used in one of my classes. I allocate a good time for data. So I bring in real data sets early on. I use static tutorials and have assignments on them. I give specific lectures on data handling, data issues, and give in detail examples. And we have an empirical project which focuses on data skills and also writing and creating tables and graphs. So the concepts that I focus on are correlation, causation. Counterfactual is a very important concept that I get to towards the end of the class. Projection in matrix world is one thing that I discuss a lot in 2 or 3 sessions. And also we have paper-based exercises. So in the exams, I often use my own research, give tables from papers and ask students to interpret them. So I leave this slide aside so I don't run short of time, but I have some views on option courses. And finally, if I may finish my conclusion, we have very eager students, very talented. They seem to learn something at the end. And we have pushed the quality of teaching in Iran, an externality of engaging in active teaching and improving the quality. The challenges have been keeping the balance between examples and theory, which is a very difficult task for teachers. And also accommodating the diversity of students is very difficult. It takes a lot of energy and also sometimes one-by-one interaction from the teacher. Keeping up to date with research is very tough, especially because I handle a diverse set of courses and the teaching load is just excruciating high in Iran. Going forward, we would love to have access to syllabi, slides, and lectures from our colleagues abroad. For core courses, we would like to see whether there have been sea changes across the board, like references, Maskell-Wilson Green has been replaced by some new things. In the field courses, we would like to see the key papers, books, and we have to keep updated with the frontier. We can share teaching ideas across this platform and other platforms, examples of our techniques, which we use in our classrooms, classroom games. And finally, we can rely on peer observation as well, which is a very valuable thing that is underappreciated, I think, in the community. Thank you.
Thank you, lovely. Mohammed, I would like us to get back to these issues. You know, I realize that you rushed through some of your slides, but we will get back to these in a roundtable discussion. The purpose of it is just to give the overall.
I'm sorry if I took more time.
No, that's fine. Now we'll hand over to our next speaker, Fatemeh. Dr. Fatemeh Najafi has a PhD in monetary economics from Tarbiyat Modarris, and she's got a master's in public administration from Harvard Kennedy School. Now, Fatemeh is very unique. She has worked in academia, policymaking institution, and private sector. Many of us academics never left school, essentially, but so she has been exposed to very valuable information, quite unique exposure to different fields. As an educational resource, you know, I encourage you to follow Fatemeh's Twitter account. I've learned loads, so I treat it as a pedagogical tool. And finally, she's now working as a data science theory and practice, which I assume is a private sector. So she's able to give us very valuable insight about the employability skills that most economist graduates actually lack. So Fatemeh, the floor is yours.
Thank you, and I'm real flattered with that compliment, but in contrary to Mohammed, I would take it with all pleasure. And just being worked with businessmen, I learned, okay, do not be humble. Okay, which is not very appreciated in academia, the first things. And let me jump into the slides. So as you can see, I do not have the fancy way of talking about the academic learning of economic. But what I can see, okay, my experience is teaching very rather diverse, mostly focused on working with grads and professionals who are willing to learn economics, econometrics, quantitative method, and statistics. Not necessarily all of them were graduated from the STEM. Some of them were graduated from the health, some of them were students in public policy, or most of them were CS and computer scientists. One of the turning point for me was teaching as a teaching flow, teaching quantitative methods and econometrics, statistical related things in Harvard Extension School and Harvard Kennedy School. But my own responsibility right now in last 2 years, mostly involved in education and training when you are working. So a part of my job is just supervising and mentoring fresh graduate and interns in theory and practice. And when I'm talking about our company, we are a small agile team. We are working internationally with different organizations from developing countries to United States in different projects, trying to bring the theory into practice. So our interns are mostly graduates, most of them PhD candidate or PhD grads, and it is rather some sort of mentoring and supervising them, getting some people from academia and help them to place in a real world, sitting in front of some people who doesn't know economics, but they have some problems. On that note, let me talk about from different angle. We know that higher education is a market. All of the people around this room are mostly economists or familiar with econ. So higher education.
Let me interrupt you. Have you changed your slide?
This is the first slide. Yes,
Okay,
you asked me to add this.
No, that's fine. No, I thought you were
okay,
changing.
yeah.
It's my mistake. All fine.
Okay.
Carry on.
Okay. Before going to the rest of the slides, let us look at the educational markets and how it's shaped, how the economic education is shaped, teaching as a supply and asking for economic knowledge as a demand. It has been driven by another market, which is a job market in econ sector for econ graduate. Let's take a little bit statistics here. The first one, which highlighted in green, is from the LSE, Dr. Vasal's University. And if you are looking them, only 30% of their grad students, both master and PhD, in all years, in last 6 years, have been working in academia, education, teaching, and research. Most of them are working in consultancy. 12% of them working as a content and auditing. About 10% of them working in public sector. The white one is, the white one is, I think, from the MIT Econ School, and this is the statistic for PhDs. We know that when people are going to MIT or Sloan School, somewhere like that, they're mostly likely to be placed in academic market. And the odds is 72% of them has been placed there. And general market. This graph came from the Central Bank of Australia, and this is the overall market for economists in Australia. And if you are looking at, this is a whole population from bachelor to PhD. Most of the people are working in public sector, professionals, and teaching economics has the rank 5th when we are putting all the economic graduates together. There's a diverse area, but if we want to narrow this down, it can be narrowed to public sector and policy making, academia and education, and different types of consultancy. You can work for a consultant company, or you can work as a consultant inside the company, do research, answer questions, being advisor. Our job are working around this. And what we have in common, we are having clients who will pay his or her time, money, other resources, reputation to know unknowns. And this is a common practice for all the economists. in university, we have our students, we are training them. They know that they don't know something, and they're going to be prepared for another market. We have very strong instruments to shape their incentives. Yes, always we have principal agent problem here with the students, all the moral hazard, adverse selection. Put them aside, we have enough instrument to shape their needs and preferences. In private sector, we basically have clients with a deep understanding of something is not working. A lot of time the clients have a very given and very presumed, they have some presumptions about the strategy, and they are looking for their needs to be fit into that strategy. They have fixed mindset, and one important thing, they are paying from their own pockets. So their preferences and their needs must be aligned, and they are listening better. Right? They are narrowly trying to solve a very specific question or problem. In public sector, the story is rather different. The client is aware that something is not working. The goal of change is not proficiency, in spite of the private sector, is legitimacy. And they are paying from the public resources. What they want, immediate legitimacy, immediate trust, immediate reputation. And that is the difference between these three types of clients. But what we are selling, another aspect of our market. If we were an engineer, we would go through fancy, beautiful projects with a very specific known purpose. The outcome would be very clear, and we could do a planning, start a dam, start a construction, start another line in a factory. There's another types of the problem, mostly in IT, tech sector. The client faces a malfunctionality or misfunctionality, and they have desire, they know their desire, and they have some clear needs. What is not clear here is that how to get there. And they have an objective, but the details are not clear. So they know some features, and they are somehow clear about their needs and when they're responding to their desire instead of their needs. But as economists, the problem is that we have clients facing misfunctionality and unknown. They have desire and needs that are not fully aligned. The solved problem is not predetermined. And clients have a lot of presumptions, first, about the strategy, and they're trying to fit their strategy as a solution and shape the problem in a way that fits to that strategy. What was the result for us when we are talking to pedagogy in economy? If we are working as a practitioners, we need some sort of a special learning curve. And we have our final clients, other, as a business owner, business activist, or general and public opinions as a final client. I'm going first to talk about the final client, how we are shaping a problem in private sector, and based on my experience, a part of public sector in different countries. And then I'm switching to the practitioner side as economists or as our student, what we are going to train.
That's 5 minutes.
Okay, perfect. Let us look at this. We have been talking about that our life is in unknown problem, in unknown area. So it has started from learning from clients, how we can listen to their story, collect the requirement, and understanding a problem from different stakeholders, not just from the Minister of Finance, not just from the head of the bank, but from the IT people, from the people who are responsible for data, from the end user, which are the clients. Go to the CRM, client research managerial part, or client relationship managerial part. Listening from all the clients, shaping a model. We have to reconstruct the model into very detailed economic language. We are economists. We cannot going back and forth and just putting some models in front of somebody and try to make that two different things be stitched together. So first narrative, then translating into a specific economic theory. We need to, okay, it is partial market, it is not working. I have an organization, the problem is that there are a lot of asymmetric information in banks, how we can get them, how we can proxy them. Going back, we have to educate our clients in a way that they understand the economic language and a statistical language at that point. We cannot go solve a problem and come, okay, this is your solution. They need to learn about the mechanism because we always are facing uncertainty and they need to take risk. So they must be clear. Then we are developing a theory of change. We know we have explanatory theory. We know something is not working and we design the intervention. Another part of learning, how to assess the success and design in a way that both clients, both the end users, both the beneficiaries and us are understanding, and we can make trade-offs between things. Then another hard part of each project is that communicating actionable insights and strategy. A part is that preparing human elements and collective organizational learning. Not only the people who authorize us or the people who sponsor a project must be ready. For example, we are going to do a experiment design over a successful campaign of gathering, increasing the amount of term deposit in a Canadian bank. Okay, our sponsors are fully aware, but they have a lot of operational staff that must learn, okay, collecting the data is important, how incentivize them, how listen to them, and how make sure that they understand their role. Then the solution deployment. And after that is for me, the most interesting part because it's mostly related to causal inference and is that impact evaluation. Using both hard data, using econometric models, using statistics, using economic theory, and narrating a story about the soft data. Then we have to adapt the explanatory theory. I have never worked in any circumstance that our first initial theory didn't need any adjustment or additional things. We start from some simple demand theory. We have to add different other elements. When the result is coming, we have to adapt that and searching for more cutting edge. So it is a lifetime of learning and research if you are even out of the academia. What is missing in Iran market? The answer is I echoed whatever Dr. Vasal was talking about, the problem with the statistics and the problem of intuition for some economists with the people. These red areas are the area that, based on my experience, was my missing part in Iran and is missing part for even graduates from the top 10s in outside of the Iran. Learning from client, shaping and reconstructing the problem, and finding a best theory that can fit, that can narrate that problem in a way that has an economic structure. Another problem, collecting and curating relevant data. Not only understanding the data, having knowledge about the data, but writing questionnaires for the first time. All the things related to that. Collecting the data out of big data, minimum viable data. What a specific data is needed to say. And it means that a person, when are working on some problem, on a specific problem, needs to know what is the end goal and what they want the data to talk about.
1 minute.
Okay, I'm trying to jump to the other part. The communication skills is very important, and just having everybody engaged, not only the direct one, but only the second layer of beneficiaries. I told that about the client part, but let's take a look over what economists and practitioners are doing. A part of our job is just diagnosis and design. The second part is implementation and monitoring. And the last part is evaluation. Bad news. The prestige in working in public, private sector, and academia is diminishing through this graph. So people are less are less inclined to work in implementation and monitoring. And the skill set that we need, we highly need some skills like econometrics, statistical modeling, ML, data science in a blue line. Direct economic theories.
Wrap up, please. Yeah.
Okay. This is another way of that. If we want to work in each part of this, I'm not talking very heterodox. I don't mean by this slide that you should not study mass color. My assumption is that you would learn mass color, you would learn Romer, you would learn dynamic optimization very carefully and very detailed in master and in PhD. So the student must know that. This is assumption. On top of that, what we need having in-depth and wide range of knowledge in diagnosis. We need multidisciplinary courses. We need people to be inclined to be involved in different case studies in different countries, and not just success stories, but failure stories, not to repeat them. The last part, which is mostly for economists, again, we need in-depth knowledge, and we need in practice experience with data from scratch to advanced. One of my problems with one of my new colleagues, I'm responsible for him, and his PhD candidate in one of the top 10 in Europe, is that, okay, this is not just a model, this advanced model must start from cleaning the data, finding the best features, variables, covariate. And when you are using that, I'm not your supervisor. We are not going to move the frontier. We are going to solve a problem. We do not have time for reviewing everything and matching them to be published. We have to solve this problem. And we have a client in front of us.
20 seconds.
My last slide. And so since the market in Iran, Dr. Vesal gave us a very nice example. Half of their students are going to be clients for foreign education. This to cutting edge studies is very hard in Iran. Multidisciplinary courses are so limited, and the case studies. When you get out, and because we not only limited in the context of the country, we do not have enough internship programs with rather dedicated advisor in both sides, both theory and practice. So the students are not exposed to the in practice work. And that is this. So It's not matter if you're leaving the academia, it's still your life is dedicated to a long life of learning and education.
So you never left school either, Fatima. You never left school. Okay, great. Our next speaker is Dr. Mehdi Faizi. He is an assistant professor of economics at Ferdowsi University of Mashhad. His research interest is in theoretical macro economics with a strong interest in market design and industrial organization. His research has appeared in very prestigious journals like Journal of Economic Theory and Journal of Mathematical Economics. It just, gives me joy, Mehdi, when I see a paper in top journals with an affiliation from Iran. So, but Mehdi also cares very deeply about teaching. He, again, has a passion for communicating economics to the public. He has done TED Talks. He is featured in popular podcasts like CTaLE, Forecast, and he has actually translated books. He has translated Poor Economics by Duflo and Banerjee with Jafar Khairkhan, and also translated Identity Economics by George Arkelov. And a very fun fact about him, I think he's the only academic in Iran who commutes to work by bicycle. Mehdi, over to you.
Thank you very much. Actually, I'm not the only, but yeah, there are very few. So let me share my screen. Okay, now I think you should.
All good. Yeah, all good.
Yeah. Okay, perfect. Okay. Thanks for having me here. It's kind of it's a very great pleasure, I think, and I'm very happy and I'm excited to share my experience here. I hope I could make it in 15 minutes because I know Ramin is very sharp, so let's see. First, I give you some broad picture about our university in Mashhad, which is like kind of old one, more than 70 years. There are like more than 800 faculties, like 25,000 students, more than 60 like departments, and more than 2,500 international students, which makes it actually the most international university in Iran, both in terms of absolute or relative weights. We have a lot of students actually in econ. I got just recent data from the uni, which also surprised me still because this is by far more than what I was expected. But yeah, this is figures. Like 1,500 students in just bachelor, mostly female, and they mostly actually end up in public sector or private. And actually, we have also a lot of students from other countries, sometimes up to 20% or 17 or 15 or things like that, mostly from countries around and recently mostly from Afghanistan. In masters, we have like 2 different majors, like energy economics, development, and just simply economics. And in this, like we have also some hundreds of master's students, and also in PhD, we have like 5 majors, which give us like more than 100 PhD students. So all together, there's a huge community there. We are like almost 20 active faculty members, which mostly work in development economics, urban economics, and they have actually have also some work on countries around like Afghanistan, which I could go in more detail if time permits. What I'm doing there, like lately, I've been teaching these courses, like market design, game theory, IO, and others. I'm saying lately because at the very beginning, you cannot choose what to teach. You don't have a say. So they give you some course and you teach that course. So like at the very beginning for some, I think at least 2 years, I was teaching almost everything. Any department, anything, like just to kind of prove yourself. And then they let you choose what to teach. So this is from the time I had the privilege to choose my kind of field, but still, this is changing from time to time. So in undergrad, we have around 40 to 60 on average, and in grad schools, we have like 10 to 15 students per class. So challenges. I have more to say here and about a little of joy, which comes next. The very first one is that the ratio of students to professors is just unbelievable. So as I showed at the very beginning, there are a lot of students and few faculties. So we are encountering a lot of students coming at our door every day. So before this pandemic, the story was like, I was going to school, to the university every day, and there were students at my office. So, and that was the story during the day. So they come one after one. So you have office hours, but well, doesn't work. So, I mean, it's just a lot. And during that time, you cannot kind of concentrate on anything, which is, I think, which is good at some point, but also is like kind of consuming your time. And yeah, you don't have time to do your own business. The story comes from the inefficient student admission procedure that we have in Iran, which is also not incentive compatible. Basically, public universities get more money from the government based on how many students they have. So the more you have, the more money you get. So basically, you're trying to to fill the gap and get them more from like bachelor ones. In grad school, the more students you have, the more theses you have. This means that you have more paper published, more money to get from like supervising those theses. This also brings the problem of incentive compatibility. So that's why we have so many students in different levels. So that's the first challenge. There is no balance between these two sides. The other problem here is that TA is not working very well. The thing is that we don't have enough grants to pay those guys. So that's why good ones don't come into the market. So you have a really hard time to find a really good TA. And this makes it very hard for you to take all the burden because you should manage the whole course by yourself. And even, I mean, students are not paid in general, right? Not only TA, but also even PhD students are not paid. So you should not expect from them to do a really good job, not only in their research, but also in their classes. And all this together makes you very super busy. Like there are a lot of things to do. Like myself, I'm teaching on average 14 hours a week. And it has been also sometimes near to 20 hours a week, which is a lot. I mean, and you should prepare slides, assignments, everything. And this leaves you with almost no time to do your own jobs. And besides all this, you have like administrative things like theses, papers, all the things, which is simply a lot. Language. Interestingly, at the very beginning, because well, I was like learning English all in English. I was learning econ in English from the very beginning, so I didn't have the chance to learn econ in Farsi from the very beginning. So when I started teaching at the very beginning back in Mashhad, I had problem in the first semester because I didn't know the terminology in Farsi. And later, when I wanted to switch to English, well, it was not allowed because of the law. Things has got better lately, but still, this language is a problem. Some policies which I was trying to implement was not working. Like I was not checking who is there, who's not, but I had to do that at some point. I tried take-home exam, didn't work because they were cheating. Lately, I'm using English slide even for bachelor students. Like this semester, I have first year bachelor students, second year, and I'm using English for everything. And this is working for the very first time, which is kind of surprising for myself, but yeah, it's a good side. And the other problem is that most of these students, they come from like humanitarian from in their high school. So they used to like memorize everything. And it's really hard to teach them that, hey, you don't have to memorize these things, just try to learn it. And especially because they come after this concours, they have this mentality of just memorizing and memorizing and memorizing. And since they see economics as some subfield of humanities, they have this attitude to just try to memorize. And at the very beginning, you have this hard time to teach them that this is not your job. Try to understand. You don't have to memorize anything. The other problem is that, I mean, this is not for Sharif or Khatam because they have different curriculum, but we have used the official curriculum from the ministry, which is very like kind of, how to say, weird. So we have some unusual courses like Islamic capital market or other things, which is really hard to teach or even imagine. And we have like very outdated topics in graduate school, which like leaves you with no way to improve your teaching because this is the thing you should have to teach and it's coming from like outside and this is the way you should work. And yeah, and this is like really annoying. The other problem is like our university and not only here, I think in some other ones is that some professors try this rhetoric approach that just just talk. So there's no math, there's no graph, there's no equation. So it's like kind of blah blah, right?
5 minutes.
So,
Mehdijan, 5
five?
minutes. 5
okay,
minutes.
sure. So okay. So when you have some colleague doing that sort of approach, it's really hard to compete because you're the tough guy that you're pushing students to learn math, but the other colleagues are just using like their position just to talk. The other problem is heterogeneity of students because they're coming from different backgrounds. So some of them are really, really bad in math, especially in bachelor. So they even don't know the very super simple math. You don't believe that, but you have to just see that. I mean, unbelievable. Just simple summation, like things like that. It's very, very like tough to just go through all the very super basic math. And yeah, that's not very surprising if you look at the trend of students coming from high school. This is what you get. Like the less coming from math, the more coming from like science, and even science is like declining lately. So most of them are in shortcoming with very, very bad background in math. It doesn't make them fit to learn econ. And the same you can see here in the last 10 years, like the percentage of students from math is just decreasing and students going to science mostly. The other problem here, which is also very annoying, is this new generation of students, which they call, I think, Z generation or something. The problem here is you can see significant decrease in average and increase in variance of their quality, motivation, hope, and interest. So year by year, you see less interested students who have less quality, less motivated, and this is also very, very sharp. And I've already been teaching for 9 years, and I could really confess that this is the trend, which is really like, yeah, I'm really sorry for this, but this is the problem. The other problem is the language, not only in English, but also in Farsi. Like this new generation, they even have a hard time writing Farsi, simple Farsi. And they use different grammar, words, things like that, which for my generation is like nonsense, or I cannot really get it. This is also really, really, really like tough, especially lately, this generation are not used to write. So they have problem with that. And they're also really score oriented. They just want to get good grades no matter what. That was the challenge part. I mean, for the joy part, I have really not enough time, but I will go quickly. For me, the most enjoyable part was the feeling of contribution that I had for the community. So maybe if I was in Tehran, in Sharif, Khatam, I don't know, maybe I didn't have that feeling, but here I did, and I do feel this, right? I do feel that I'm doing something, I'm adding something. I'm teaching some course for the very first time in our department, like behavioral economics, experimental, game theory, market design. We didn't have any history of all those. So I got very great feedbacks from my students that this was life-changing, this was changing my, not only in their job, but also in their life. So that was the really crucial part for me. Other than that—
1 minute.
1 minute, okay, I'm almost done. Like, coming back to your hometown, you could act like as a bridge to bring your friends from outside, from other countries, to your hometown, and like make this platform of communication and like exchange. And I think also the association could also help us in that matter. So like at the very beginning, I was organizing some summer school, winter school, things like that, and then we continued that with my friends, Dr. Farzan and Gan back in Germany, with also other colleagues in Tarbiyat Mudarris and University of Tehran. For some years, we were also organizing international summer schools and winter schools in Mashhad and Tehran. There's a very new like joy for me but I think I don't have time for this. I put this for the.
We'll get
maybe
back to the
last time
joys.
later.
We'll back to the joys in the
Exactly.
closing remarks.
Exactly, I will do that. Thank you very much. So I stop here.
Very good, very good. Could you stop sharing your screen? So I'll reduce our time for roundtable discussion, but before that, Etijan, would you be able to stop sharing the screen? But before that, let me bring the audience in. So I am going to give you 1 minute break, right? And see the chat. I'm pretty sure there are a lot of teachers. I think we can still see your screen, Etijan, if you.
Oh yeah, sorry.
So I would like to ask the members of the audience, I'm pretty sure that there are a lot of people who have been teaching or are teaching at the moment, just to bring you into the discussion as well. I give you 1 minute. I would like you to type in the chat box, the modules you have been teaching, the level of that modules, whether they're undergraduate, the postgraduate, PhD, or to non-professionals or training, and where have you done that? I'll give you 1 minute. Don't enter your answer now. I want the answers to pile up. And after 1 minute, I ask everyone to enter their answers. So stop writing. We'll have a 1 minute break to our panelists. You can go fix your hair, drink a glass of water, and come back. Okay, all good. On my go. Gamyarja, are you here, everyone? So I think 1 minute is done. So on my count of 3, right, you enter your answers. So 1, 2, 3, enter, please. I think it usually has a delay. Okay, in the meantime that everyone is typing their answers, let me just start off our roundtable discussion. So the way we're going to talk about briefly, let me set my timer here. So essentially, we're going to talk about the skills that any economist have to have, the essential skills, and the essential skills that come to my mind are these. And I'm going to revolve our discussion around these skills. So let's start with a very basic skill of an economist, finding a relevant material about a topic. So Mohammed, let me start with you. I call this skill, finding relevant and reliable material about a topic, right? I call the skills literature review skills. How's the literature review skills of your students overall, if you want to evaluate?
At the beginning, they're very poor and they struggle to even read papers. But towards the end of the program, I think they improve a lot given the training in option courses. So in option courses, I often formally discuss how they should read papers, how should they approach academic papers. We don't focus much on policy papers or non-academic things.
It's all journal articles, basically.
Yes, yes.
Okay. Okay.
We also had a formal research method course, which we just abolished and moved on to a kind of workshop type training, where I hold like sessions where I talk about how to search for articles, how to do a literature review, assess like papers, things like that. And then I propose like modules for assignments, etc., that they can work on, and we discuss it in the workshop. This is, however, is not working as I've planned it because of the resource constraint at the department, and like the informality of the workshops is hard to basically implement in the formal program, where the university does not allow you to divert resources to the informal.
So this is a workshop devoted to literature review, right?
Yeah, it's devoted to different research skills. Part of it is literature review. Like I spent 3 or 4 sessions on literature review.
Okay, Mehdi.
Well, it's very bad actually. So like from my experience, they have really hard time doing that. So they don't know even the philosophy of it, they should do that, why they should do that. If you go through their papers or like dissertations, you have like bullet points of like Ali said that, Mehdi said that, Hussein said that, done, right? So this is just like showing that you have read, hopefully their abstracts, that's it. So there is no like critical like assessment, there is no categorization, nothing like that. So from my side, I mean, maybe some very few exception here, but in general, yeah, it's not that good.
So let me move on to the next set of skills, which is probably the most important one these days, is the data analysis skills. So Fatemeh, do you provide any training on basic data visualization to your peers who are non-economists?
Yep.
Could you elaborate?
We have to. Let's start. We start at basics from who is the audience, what is the goal, and what you want to communicate. It is not, data visualization is not about the fancy graphs. It's about the informative graphs, informative, interactive things, interactive environment. Decide your audience, assess their knowledge, answer the question, then go through different sets of tools and examples. My presumption is that I ask my colleagues, peers, and the students first, follow whatever video you could find from Roslan, late Roslan.
Oh, Hans Rosling, yeah, one of my favorites. Yeah, definitely.
I assume that you are doing this, you would be able to understand what I'm talking. Then these are the tools in Python, R and Stata. You can find them through the internet from these guys perfectly. Now come here, talk about the audience, talk about how we can communicate more information with one graph instead of a couple of slides.
Good. Mehdi, data visualizations. I'm talking about very simple descriptive data. Any comments?
Right. Well, I'm not teaching that sort of courses like econometrics, but yeah, I know like they are doing this, but yeah, again, beyond that, it's not good. So students do not get the very main idea why they should do that, how they should do that, and all that. So this is like, because there is not enough time, so they just go through it very simply, nothing deeply, and nothing for the like the business side or like for the outside of the university. So maybe they could live with that the university, but not in the real life.
I mean, maybe it's of interest to you. We devote an entire workshop, sometimes we create to very simple data visualization. So we kind of do it. We call them skills lab. It's actually a workshop,
All right.
So you don't provide any sort of training on that?
No,
it's all within the curriculum. It's supposed to be in the curriculum. Okay.
Exactly.
But interestingly, we see that, with big data revolution, this is really having its own course. It's extra, a lot of extracurricular activities. Now, Mohammed John, again, on data analysis, how do you introduce your students to available data sources?
So I often list basically whatever data is available from various institutions. I go to the website in class and explore parts of the website of SCI, for example, the Statistical Center of Iran. I also require them to do an empirical project. It's often a replication exercise where they need to take one paper. This year I used Farsi papers, and then they have to gather the data themselves sometimes from the international sources.
Let me interrupt you. The replication is at what level? Is it the MSc students or PhD?
MSc students.
Carry on, sorry.
Yeah. But I do some training on data visualization, reading tables, how we should prepare pretty and informative tables and graphs. But then when they come to the thesis part, I realized that they did not catch what we discussed during the classes. So I think the training is not enough. And we probably need to move on to, let's say, skill workshops, as you described, for data visualization and techniques as well.
What about, I think, do you think, recommending pop statistics book can be a remedy, or is it they struggle to read the English?
They're better at reading English than what Mehdi has described, but they sometimes struggle with reading English books as well.
Okay.
There are good sources for generating good graphs and tables. I myself did it on my own. So I just read the book and realized how the data works for those things.
Fatima, any comments on teaching data skills?
Yes, back to Mohammed's point about that, we are practicing different types of projects with the students, and we are grading them, and we are asking them, okay, go through the result and everything. And then even as a grad student, as I graduated from PhD, and I don't mean just in Iran, our colleague come to the office at the first graph that they would pass doesn't have title. The numbers are odds. The numbers are exactly odds, because it used to be the responsibility of his supervisor to sit and focus on all the nitty gritty. So these kind of skills must be filled with some sort of internship, with some sort of things that they are responsible and they took the ownership of the things. So they learn title, units, and making sense. And when you're talking the story, having a graph that you have a story about it.
I mean, this follows on, one part is, finding the relevant material, finding the data, analyzing it, but then communicating it, which leaves us to our next set of skills. We'll have 3 minutes to end this discussion, so let's be very brief. So any comments on writing and presentation skills? As economists, as I said, there's a growing amount of evidence that we're not able to communicate our ideas to the public or to the co-workers. Any comments on that? Any initiative, anything? Mohammed?
Yeah, that's the weakness of Iranian students. So they often struggle to deliver in terms of writing and in terms of presentation. We don't have any special, let's say, training for that part, except for some project presentation in courses and also during the thesis. So I focus, especially during the consultancy times with my students, on how they should improve their presentation skills. Often we have group presentation where one student is presenting, others are sitting and listening, and I ask them to give feedback on their peers as well.
What's this module? Sorry. Is it dissertation or MS thesis? Or
it's just the way that we supervise our students during the MSc thesis.
Oh, it's a thesis. Okay. So
yes.
Basically you've put all the bulk of writing and presentation skills on the MSc thesis.
Not really. The writing, I start the writing skills from the beginning of their entry during the micro one and econometrics course. But not all my colleagues appreciate that. So it's not a practice followed by everyone.
Fatima? I think this should be a major part of your work, writing and presentation.
Yep. I spent 20 hours over on a model, which is very detailed. It's first synthetic analysis, then using that synthetic analysis to shape experiment design and do all these fancy things. This is 30% of our job. Then 70% of our job is just how to communicate this. Our way of doing this is just everybody put all the materials as much as possible, doing peer reviews, then going back to the people who are expert in presenting, which are the sales and marketing people, not only in our organization, but outside. sometimes reaching back to the people outside of organization and even outside of a client to make it be understandable. Then make it in 3 different layers. 1 line of message, 3 slides of message, 5 slides of message, and all the background notes, which are, I know that the fancy part and interesting part is the one that we are not presenting, but we needed some sort of rhetoric. By rhetoric, I don't mean the rhetoric that Faizi was talking about. I mean a rhetoric based on the data and theory and how we can just make it coincide. But most of our job is this.
Very good. And I think we're done with our discussion. Let's go to our questions. Already good questions submitted. So the way it's going to work, so if you want to open up your mic and ask your question orally, just type in the chat box here, just say question, right? And there are already a number of questions submitted. I'll ask you to be very brief. So let me pose this to, I think a very first one, Mohammed, let me pose this to you. Amal submitted a very interesting question. What are the challenges for female students? Are there extra efforts exerted to enhance their engagement? How do you engage the female students, basically? 1 minute.
Okay, I think it relates to Hashem's question as well. Like, what are the differences between Iran and the other countries that require adaptation in terms of teaching skills? Students in Iran are often shy, so they don't engage in discussions. And for female students, they're often minority in our classes. Like we have a class of 30, 40, and there are only 5 female students, or even 2 sometimes, which is very scary for them to engage in any discussion. So what I do is often cold call them and ask them to participate. And I often try to gauge the question according to the ability of the students, so not to discourage them. Yeah.
I don't think there's, to be honest with you, based on what you've said, of course, we need concrete data on that, but on the personal anecdotes, I struggle with this as well, especially with female students. They are a minority as well. We have less students than the STEM average, less than 30%, and I struggle to engage them as well. So let's go to Hashem's question. So Hashem is more about the content, I believe, right? Or let's break down to these 2 things, how the content of teaching is different between what you do in Iran and what is usually done in the US and Europe. Mehdi?
I mean, content-wise, there are a lot of difference. I mean, and it depends on which courses you're talking about. Like, in my experience, like also maybe the same for Mohammed, when you have math school level, then you have like Hawaiian, and this is quite standard.
Can you just go through a case study?
Exactly.
Of your course, yeah.
Yeah, exactly. So that's quite like standard in different countries. Like, but in other courses like econometrics, math, and things like that, people use quite different like syllabus in their courses in Iran. So there's a huge gap. Also, once it goes to like inflation, monetary policy, like things like that, that's quite different. Maybe Sharif is exception, but like other countries, other universities are quite low in that sense. Like they are not really up to date yet, and they're not using the same like textbook, the same syllabus as other countries.
So just let me ask again, where is the smallest gap? In terms
the smallest gap is micro, like in micro, like game, things like that. So that's quite in the other side in micro.
And what about the whole applied stuff? You know, the credibility revolution. You know, has Mohammed, would you like to comment on that?
That is not in their scope anyway.
Yeah, Mohammed, would you like to comment on that?
To basically train students on that issue. And I've done a lot as well, but I think we are still very far from the point that there is a common knowledge of this issue of correlation is not causation. Yeah, we are very far.
I wanted to make a point here. Sorry,
just before that,
I used to be.
Just Kamia, would you? I think Anaita wants to open up her mic. Anyway, carry on. Yes, carry on.
Okay.
Sorry.
I used to be a PhD student in Iran, And the book that they taught us, it was also a Sharif. The last edition of the book was published in 1981. And we were not welcome to work instead of textbook on papers. When I came outside, I see, okay, textbooks here, everybody's going to read them. But main weight would be under the papers. And it was the most salient difference that I experienced. So from the very chronic, boring, exhausting part, I went, okay, live public, and it is mostly in macro. As a student, I can say.
Let's give the floor to Anahita. We're all ears.
Hello, everyone. Thank you very much for giving me the floor. So my question is coming from someone who is a graduate of economics rather than a teacher of economics. And I would like to mention something. This is mainly an observation from my side, and feel free to say that it's not the right observation. So something that I've noticed is that in Iran, the diversity of roles and opportunities that graduates of economics can take on is much lower than in other countries. So it's limited to either academia, especially for MSc grads, either limited to the public sector, academia, and in the private sector, it's limited to financial firms mostly. And my question is, well, our curriculum is also a good fit for this. So I personally started doing my master's in economics for a semester, and then decided I don't want to go to academia. So this curriculum does not prepare me much for the private sector. So I went on a break, and my question is, do you find the cost? Yeah. So do you find the causality to be the demand-driven aspect, or do you think that our curriculum is shaping the role that graduates of economics can take on? Thank you.
Mohammed?
On the other side, we have a lot of inertia in the universities. Like the financing of the university does not depend on, let's say, attraction of their program for students. And therefore, they're not really incentivized to change their programs according to the market conditions. Yeah, but I disagree with the fact that you said at the beginning that the market is limited, in the sense that the private sector has proliferated in the recent years. And a lot of our graduates are now working in unconventional, I would say, sectors.
Okay, Kamyar, can we borrow 8 more minutes? Yeah? Definitely. Would you mind reading out Mohammad Farzanadan's question? It's a very good question. I'm going to get to Hojjat's and Mehnaz as well, but let me actually read it down.
We can get Mohammed to come and say it.
Yeah. So if you just want to open your mic, just type in the chat here, just say question, and then we'll ask you to open up your mic. So in the meantime, we had 2 sort of questions from Hojjat and Mehnaz, and actually asking about the what happens afterwards. Do we have good data on the salary of economic graduates? Anyone?
I think some of them are in par with like faculties in Iran. Like in the private sector, they get quite good salaries.
Okay. But no data. It's one of the, I think this kind of falls down to the economics of education side, yes, rather than an economic pedagogy per se. But anyway, we need to have these data, in the end of the day. Mehdi, I think there was another question, I think from Mehnaz, kindly provide some data on undergraduate economics enrollment and whether they're employable with a bachelor's degree.
Yeah, actually we have like most of our bachelor, they get job. Well, not very well paid anyway, but if they want to get job, they could get job mostly, but not of course.
Any idea about sort of a job, private sector, public?
Like I had in my slides, like mostly like in banks, in insurance companies, like municipality, things like that.
Very good. And I think we covered these questions.
I think Muhammad is here.
Muhammad, open your mic.
Yeah, hello, salam, all the panelists. Thank you for organizing this very important panel, Ramin. And my question to all panelists in Iran is, what is the difficulties that you see regarding starting types of joint degree, double degree programs? I guess one of the ways for internationalization of economics teaching in Iran is to have this type of international collaboration.
Very good.
Of course, there are some issues related to the sanctions and
got the
things
question.
like.
Thank you.
Yes,
Let me
that would
pose
be
it.
great. Yeah.
Thank you. Mohammad, Fatima, I'll come to you, right? I'm just waiting for the right question. Mohammad, comments on that.
We had experiences in the past, like right now we have a joint degree with the University of Macquarie in Australia. We also had joint programs with Waterloo, I think, in Canada. Right now, the sanctions is one big deal. The other is like familiarity with contacts, like outside universities often do not appreciate the existence of talents in the university because we don't have enough exposure in terms of research and participation in conferences, etc. But we are open to that, and we are eager to actually start collaboration. Students also very appreciate that. If there are any offers, I'm actually the right person, because I'm the research deputy and the international affairs person for our department right now.
By the way, Mama, I just copied and pasted all the sources about field of economic pedagogy. I think you, for instance, do a lot of innovative things that you can present in these conferences. So it's one of those fields that we are already doing a lot of these pedagogical innovations, but we're not being aware of it, right? People make a career out of these things. So have a look at that link. Majid, floor is yours.
Hello, I want to ask a question regarding educating the undergrad students, and that's about the restrictions this entrance exam for graduate studies puts on the course material. For example, I had to teach a macro course, and the book that is the source for the entrance exam contains information on national accounts that is the I think for half a century ago, and even our central bank does not use that standard anymore. But I had to teach the students both old version of the book and also the new version of the national accounts of UN 2008, so they be able to use the data and also be able to pass the exam. How do you? Yeah.
Would you like to repeat your question? Just
yeah. How do you overcome this problem with concours?
Fatima, do you have any comments, or would you like to? I don't want to force questions on you, so let me go to Mehdi.
I think.
Carry on.
I think Mohammed Vesal is teaching in a grad school, so they do not have that difficulty for preparing the students for a concours. And as long as you are getting out from the bachelor, you will not face that problem. It's just an observation.
Mehdi, any comments? Brief comments, 30 seconds.
Yeah, sure. Well, my policy is that I'm doing what I'm supposed to do, and then you do the same for yourself. So I know the problem, but I'm sorry. This is my syllabus, right? Dictatorship.
Good. That's a good pedagogical approach. Ali Reza.
Okay, thank you. Hello, everyone. Okay, my question is, what about having exchange programs within the country in Iran? Because of the sanctions, maybe we cannot now go abroad, but Dr. Vesal and Sharif, you said you have very much to teach to students. What about having some visiting students and going for exchange within the country to, some good professors also can promote in this program. For example, I've been in the class of Dr. Faizi is amazing, but the students from all over Iran can get more quality of education.
Exactly. I think it's a good point. Mehdi, any comments on internal?
Yeah, of course. I mean, from my side, I mean, I'm open to this, but this is a problem of administrative things. Like, if you want to come from Tehran to other cities, that's almost okay. But the other way around, well, they don't let you in. So that's the problem of kind of.
So let me, closing remarks. For closing remarks, I would like you to just say one bullet point. There's not commentary. Just give me one bullet point. I'm going to ask about the main challenge. So have a think, what's the main challenge of teaching in Iran? Mohammed, are you ready? No, you want to think. Anyone ready? Who would share one bullet point? Commuting by bicycle to your work, Mehdi?
Can I start?
Sorry? Yeah, please. One challenge.
Sure. Yeah, I mean, if I want to say just one, I mean, nowadays in Iran, we are really tough days and months in terms of like all the struggle that we have for just living. So when you see all these motivated students who are not in the class, when they're in the class, it's quite hard to like communicate, like to talk with them, to have a good lecture. Like the whole like atmosphere is not like hopeful, and and that's a difficulty.
So empty classroom or unmotivated classroom. Yeah,
exactly. Yeah.
Fatemeh, the main challenge.
I think the main challenge is learning how to learn. Not the context and concept.
Great. Let's stop at that. Let's stop at that. Great. Learning how to learn. Mohammed, main challenge.
I think teaching personal and let's say learning skills is a difficult challenge.
Okay, let's finish with the main joy, the most joyful thing about teaching in Iran. Mehdi.
Yeah, as I said, like I got really like inspiring feedbacks on my teaching, sometimes not always, from different students at different like levels. That was the joyful part. Yeah.
Fatemeh.
Actually, I'm working remotely with some students in Iran, and the most joyful part for me is that they are motivated in a way. They're facing a lot of things in terms of sanctions, access to books and everything. And they're so creative to leaving the barriers. And whenever I'm working with them, I feel, okay, how they're creative in that way.
Mohammed.
It's like how they have grown up.
Let's stop at that. With that, I hand over to Kamia.
Well, thanks so much. I think the joys of teaching are the students everywhere, whether in Iran or elsewhere. Thank you so much, guys. This was really, this was very different to what we usually do. And it was quite a lot of fun for me. And I'm sure it was for our audience too. So thank you very much to them who participated and engaged with the chat box. We haven't done that before, so thank you very much. Don't forget that we have our monthly webinar series. So I hope I see you. I have to check now the date. I think it's the 8th of June. We'll see you on the 8th of June, and it will be led by our very own Hadi Saleh Esfani, who has organized a fantastic panel. You will guess it, on sanctions and Iran's manufacturing industry. And I'll post more details about that on the website and also on the mailing list. So thank you so much to the audience, and huge thank to the panelists, and huge thank to Ramin for organizing today's webinar. Thanks so much, everyone. Have a lovely month.
Thank you very much. Thank you very much. Have a nice night.
Take care. Bye.
Bye. Bye.